little tiny church, way out in the middle of nowhere a few years back. A tiny, tiny town, and it's not anywhere that I ever envisioned myself being, and quite frankly, I felt like I ended up there because a bunch of stuff was done against me, and lies were told about me, and it was just a rough place. And I would think that I had worked through everything, and that I was moving on with my life, and everything was good. And then we had a fairly big piece of property, and it was all covered in either grass or weeds. So it was one of my jobs was to mow the property, and I had a little walk behind mower, and I would fire that thing up and I'd start walking. And there was something about, I don't know if it was the rhythm of the motor or what was going on, but I'd make maybe a couple laps around there, and all of a sudden I would start reliving and reviewing all the wrongs that had been done to me. And the more I would mow, the madder I would get. And pretty soon I was just about ready to bite through, a big old bolt or something. I was angry. I remember I thought, oh wow, God, what am I going to do here? Because I knew if I didn't get a handle on things, I was going to end up selling tires at Sears or something. Because I couldn't go on. I couldn't go on telling people about the good news that Jesus Christ wants to forgive us if I couldn't forgive someone else. There's another statement that I heard recently that I've really incorporated in my life. They said, you've only got two options when something's been done against you. You've got two options. You either get bitter or you get better. There's no in between. And I realized, I said, God, I've got to get a handle on this. And so I went and I said, how do I do this? How do I forgive these people that I'm so angry with? And God gave me a workable plan. He gave me, and it wasn't that, well, it was difficult to do. That's why the thing at the top of the list is, I want you to pray for them. I said, no problem. I will pray. God, I pray that you grind their faces into dust. I pray that they get warts on the most inconvenient places all over their body, whatever it takes. I knew that wasn't it. I said, God, how should I pray for him? He says, just pray that I'll bless them. I said, oh man. He says, pray that they'll prosper now that you're gone. Pray that the church will do so much better now that you're not there. I was like, oh. And then he said, and you have to mean it. I was like, darn. But I did it. And you know what God did? He helped me. He helped me. And it wasn't very long before I could mow the weeds and everything, and I had a smile on my face instead of all that anger and that clenched jaw. The alternative, if we don't want to forgive, God's power in our life is just stopped. Because it says God will not forgive us. Simply put, you refuse to forgive, and God will not forgive you. And I know some of you are saying, but Pastor, you don't understand. And it's true. No one knows how bad, maybe even something that seems very small to someone else. Nobody knows how even a small offense can hurt us. But think about Christ from the cross pleading the case of his crucifiers. If you read that, there he was nailed to the cross, bleeding and dying for you and I. And what did he say? He said, Father, forgive them. Forgive them. Christ will help us forgive those who hurt us. So forgiveness has to be directed inward, but forgiveness has to be directed outward. And number 3, forgiveness has to be directed upward. And you really got to work with me on this one, because it's kind of a stretch, to tell you the truth. But I can't tell you how many people I've met who are holding some kind of grudge against God. They're mad at Him. They feel like they've been slighted or betrayed in life, and therefore they think that they've been betrayed by God. And I can promise you this, I can relate to that. As I've shared, if you've been here before, my dad died when I was 13 years old. And I was very angry with God. At his funeral, we were people of faith, and so at his funeral, there was no super duper sad type of thing. We believed that my dad was gone, but he was in heaven. We talked about that, and there were a lot of people at his funeral that said, wow, that's what I want in my life. And there were people who decided to give God control of their life at my dad's funeral. And there were a lot of well-meaning people, and they said, that must be why Cecil Hubbell died. It was because so-and-so didn't have a faith in Christ. And there was one particular hard case that everybody was so happy that, man, he really turned his life around right at my dad's funeral. Everybody was so happy. I still remember when we lived out in the Mesa, and we had an acre of pasture behind our house, and I remember I walked back there. I said, all right, God. I said, if you wanted that guy so bad, why didn't you kill his dad? Why did you kill mine? And that started me down a road that I told God to take a hike, and I about killed myself with drugs and alcohol. I'm going to tell you something. There's no anger. There's no profit in anger towards God. Many of us are familiar of the account of a guy in the Bible. His name was Job, and when you read his story, it tells about how good of a man he was. Everybody knew how good he was. It says that even God said that his servant Job, this is a good guy, and God let him go through everything, and he lost everything, and he lost everyone in his family, and all this. And finally, he kind of got angry, and he questioned God. And you know what God did? God answered him. He answered him, and then he loved him, and then he restored him. And he helped him put his life all back together. And I want you to know something tonight. God's not overwhelmed by our questions. God is not overwhelmed when we are very angry or we feel that He's done something against us. That's no news to God when you come to Him and you say, God, I'm angry at you. He doesn't go, really? I didn't pick up on that. I had no idea. He knows that ahead of time, and He's not overwhelmed by that. Just take your questions to God. Ask Him. And then listen. And God will give you His perspective. He has not wronged you. That's why when I said that our forgiveness has to be directed upward, it's not because God has sinned against you. He has not. God does not sin. But that's what we feel like. And feelings, they're free. Everyone's allowed to feel anything. You know, our emotions, all that stuff, they belong to us. Nobody has a right to say, well, you should not feel that way. I mean, you can feel any way you want. But just don't count on those as being factual. Because feelings, they don't define reality. We need God's perspective on things. What we have to do is let go of our anger and let Him help us deal with things. And what'll happen? You'll win. I promise you. You'll come out winning. You won't get bitter. You'll get better. That's what forgiveness is about. Healing broken lives. I want to read this little story to you. This came out of a book by Max Lucado. And it says, Maria and Christina lived in a poor village in Brazil. Maria's husband died when Christina was an infant. Maria got a job as a maid in order to support herself and Christina. There were no luxuries, but they got by. For 15 years, things went rather well, but now Christina became a teenager, and teenagers often have minds of their own. Christina was not interested in marrying young and raising a family like most of the other girls that she grew up with. Not that she couldn't have her pick of husbands. Her olive skin and brown eyes, as well as her infectious personality, kept a steady stream of prospects at her door. But she kept them all at arm's length. Christina wanted to go to the city. She dreamed of trading her dusty neighborhood for exciting avenues of city life.